the demigods, and of all methods of sacrifice, can understand and know me, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, even at the time of death.
All right, thank you everyone for reading. Now we're going to move on to the next part, which will be reading Light of Bhagavat, and Adviraj will be leading us through that.
Yes, thank you. So we're going to get text 3 up on the screen. We recently started The Light of Bhagavat, and it's been a really nice book. So we're just going to continue reading through it. And we have a couple of questions at the end. So make sure to remember what has been said in the text and be ready to share your thoughts on it. Would anyone like to read this chapter? It's pretty short. So we can just have one person read the passage. Atharv, you can go ahead.
All right. Uh, 3. Attracted by electricity throughout the sky and driven by forceful winds, clouds gradually cover the surface of the earth to satisfy the needy people by supplying water, which is the substance of their life. The clouds bestow rains upon man as the mercy of the Lord, who is always kind to the needy living being. We should always know that God is ever kind to us, despite our gross disobedience to the laws of God's nature. The Lord is kind enough to look after our maintenance. Water is one of the most important items for our maintenance, because without water, we can neither produce food grains or nor quench our thirst. Water is also required very liberally for many other purposes. Thus, the Lord has preserved water on 3/4 of the globe and has made it salty to preserve it. Salty water does not decompose, and that is the arrangement of providence. The Lord has engaged the powerful sun to evaporate the water of planets like Earth and distill it into clear water clouds and then stock it on the peaks of mountains, as we call stock water in overhead tanks, for later distribution. Part of the stock water is refrigerated into ice so that it will not flood the earth for no good purpose. The ice melts gradually throughout the year, flows down through the great rivers, and glides down to the sea again for preservation. Therefore, the laws of God's nature are neither blind nor accidental, as men with a poor fund of knowledge conclude. Behind the laws of nature is the living brain of God, just as there is always a lawmaker behind all the laws of the state. It does not matter whether or not we see the lawmaker behind the common laws. We must admit that there is a lawmaker. Matter can never work automatically without a living hand, and therefore we must admit the existence of God, the, the supreme living being behind the laws of nature. The Lord says in Bhagavad Gita that the nature works under his superintendence. Nature is only power, and behind the power is powerhouse and the brain. Just as behind electrical power, there is an electrical powerhouse, where everything is conducted by the brain of the resident engineer. The material nature works so nicely and not blindly because of the superintendence of the supreme powerful God. In the Vedic hymns, Atharva Veda, the same thing is confirmed. It is only under the superintendence of God that all natural laws are conducted. The Lord distributes his mercy in the form of rains on the scorched earth at times of dire necessity. He supplies rain when we are practically on the verge of death or a want of water. God is merciful, undoubtedly, but he bestows his mercy on us when we need it the most. This is so because we forget God as soon as we obtain this mercy. We should therefore remember the mercy of God constantly if we want to avoid distress. We are eternally related with him despite the state of forgetfulness already described above. Bhagavad Gita confirms that the laws of nature are stringent because they are conducted by three different modes. But one who surrenders unto the Lord overcomes the stringency of nature easily. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, thank you. It's a very beautiful text. And now Parth has just a couple of questions that can make us think about what we read.
All right, hello everyone. So the main message about the pastime, or not the pastime, the passage was the mercy of Krishna. And a discussion question is, what does it mean to remember the mercy of Krishna constantly in daily life? And anyone can just shout out what they think they feel like, what it means to them. See ya, go ahead.
Hare Krishna. I think like one thing is, I mean, it's been stated in many literatures, but like whenever you're doing any action or you receive any whenever anything happens to you, no matter if it's like good or bad, like to remember that you aren't the cause of that, and it's Krishna providing it. And like as it's stated, like you aren't, like whenever you're doing an action, you shouldn't think of yourself as the cause of the actions, because Krishna's the one supplying that. So to see Krishna's mercy in everything.
Yeah, amazing. In my personal life, I've always experienced like a few years ago, some not tragedy, but something bad goes on in my life, and I'm always like wondering like, why Krishna did you do this to me? But then I learned so much from that experience, and later I realized that it was so valuable to me, even though it was a hard portion of my life, that I learned from it. And in a way, I also think of that as Krishna's mercy, that he's teaching me through my experiences. And the reading made me realize, like, I always used to wonder when I was younger, we have so much water in the sea and the oceans, but you can't really drink it, so it seems really useless. Like, why would Krishna design it like that? But the way that Prabhupada wrote all of this, um, how like he's explaining the water cycle, which is factual, and I never really connected the dots like that, that we are kind of in essence drinking seawater as well, and Krishna so wonderfully designed it. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, like I completely agree with you. Like I've seen so many people talk about how like, oh, like you'll see Krishna's mercy after something happens, you know? But like I never like really understood how that would be, because I felt like you'd always be so involved and like so like entangled in that, like you couldn't see Krishna's hand. But like when I saw something like bad happen to our family, and then looking back on it years later, I can see like why that happened and what Krishna was doing in that time. And like the whole analogy with the rain and like Krishna providing rain to when we need it the most, it like connected a lot to, I think it was the chapter in Krishna book, description of autumn maybe, but where like Krishna, I mean, Prabhupada talks a lot about how the rain, like rainfall comes, and like there's so much rain and it's distributed even on places like rocks where it's not needed, but it's just the mercy of these sadhus, and it's the mercy of Krishna that we get so much, you know, like this ability to practice bhakti. So it reminded me a lot about that.
Wow, thank you. Apurva Prema.
Hare Krishna. I was just thinking about the verse from the sixth chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Yo Mam Pashyati Sarvatra, which is saying, um, one who sees Krishna and everything in Krishna, that person is never lost to Krishna, and Krishna is never lost to him. So that really reminds me, because seeing everything in Krishna, that doesn't mean, or seeing Krishna and everything, that doesn't necessarily seeing the personality of Krishna and everything. That means seeing the hand of Krishna. So he's endorsed for that thing to happen, whatever, whether it be a calamity or whether it be a material blessing. It's only because Krishna desired it. And sometimes we were hearing one story yesterday where Krishna took away all of this person's relatives by them passing away. And this person, by following that principle, he realized that Krishna is truly trying to put him on the path of just going to Vrindavan and worshiping his deity. on his own.
Wow. That's a hard form of mercy, though. I feel like in those types of circumstances, it's really hard to feel the hand of Krishna, even though it's there. But with proper guidance, it's possible. And yeah, does anyone else have any experiences of things, the ways they felt the mercy of Krishna or how they perceive Krishna's mercy in daily life? It can be small things like food on the table or like all of these inherently are mercy of Krishna because without it we could all be beggars on the street who can't even afford the laptop to join Youth Jam even if we wanted to. So inherently we all have mercy of Krishna if we're thinking about it. Dharani, go ahead.
Hare Krishna. I was just thinking of the story, based on everyone's like realizations. I'm sure some people must have heard of this. Basically, I don't know. I don't think I have the details right, but basically, this man he had a son who I'm not sure if I get this beginning right, but like I think the son he he got a horse or something, and then everyone in the village was like, oh, you're so lucky you have a horse, and he's like, oh, we'll see. And then the son was riding on the horse, and then he fell off the horse or something, but like he broke his leg, or he was severely injured. So then everyone in the village was like, oh, you're so unfortunate, this is so sad. And he's like, okay, we'll see. And then later that year or soon, whenever, the king's like men were coming in throughout the village because they needed soldiers for the country, and since the son was injured he didn't have to go. So then the people in the village were like, oh, you're so fortunate, your son didn't have to go in the war to fight and all of that. And he's just like, we'll see. So like I think, and there I think it goes on, like there's a little bit more, I don't remember all of it. But yeah, I just wanted to like share, like I think it's very similar to how we experience things. Like in the moment, if we feel in the moment, then we'll be like, oh, this is so unfortunate, or oh, I'm so fortunate. But you always have to see, like you never know exactly how things will play out in the future, and how Krishna's hand will change the way we view things in hindsight.
Oh, wow. That was such a powerful story, actually. I've never heard it, but I've heard of like many instances like that are resembling this story that I heard about a devotee that got like taken off of a flight they were supposed to go on because it was overbooked, and that flight ended up crashing. Devotee was just like, wow. I was like so mad after they kicked me off the flight, but he was on another flight after and got home safely. But yeah. So if that's all, the next question is the next question is the passage says that nature is not blind or accidental. Do you have examples from nature that makes you feel there's intelligence behind it? I feel like we kind of touched on this, but if anyone has a more nuanced or different explanation about how they've noticed it. Yeah, I know it's hard to think about that question. Also, we kind of just like naturally flowed into the second question. Okay. No, does anyone have any reflections from the light of Bhagavad in general? Or else we can move into our reading of Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just thinking, in this seventh chapter that we just read, Krishna says that he holds everything together, like a string between the necklace. So there's one necklace which holds a bunch of rocks. Krishna's saying that he's that string. So although we can't see that string, like just through the tulsi mala, we can't see any string, but we just see these pieces of tulsi wood, and like that, Krishna says that he's that string beneath. So sometimes we're not able to see him, but in reality, he's holding everything together. The planetary systems, he's holding. the air circulation. He's the reason why we're able to digest food, the fire of digestion. Yeah, so basically, he says that everything which is done is through him, and he's that string holding everything together.
Thank you so much. You connected both of our readings together. So wonderful. Okay, well, let's move on to our weekly reading of Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita. And we can do 3 paragraphs each. If you want to read, you can raise your hand and I'll get started. The harmonium played a constant drone, and a boy wearing a military fatigue jacket improvised atonal creations on a wooden recorder. Yet the total sound of the instruments blended, and Swamiji's voice emerged above the mulling tones of each chord. And so it went for hours. Prabhupada held his head and shoulders erect, although at the end of each line of the mantra he would sometimes shrug his shoulders before we started the next line. His disciples stayed close by him, sitting on the same rug, religious ecstasy visible in their eyes. Finally, he stopped. Immediately, he stood up. They knew he was going to speak. It was 4 o'clock, and the warm autumn sun was still shining on the park. The atmosphere was peaceful, and the audience attentive and mellow from the concentration of the mantra. He began to speak to them, thanking everyone for joining in the kirtan. The chanting of Hare Krishna, he said, had been introduced 500 years ago in West Bengal by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Hare means, O energy of the Lord. Krishna is the Lord, and Rama is also a name of the Supreme Lord, meaning the highest pleasure. His disciples sat at his feet, listening. Rai Rama squinted through his shielding hand into the sun to see Swamiji, and Kirtanananda's head was cocked to one side, like a bird's who is listening to the ground. He stood erect by the stout oak, his hands folded loosely before him in a proper speaker's posture. His light saffron robes covered him gracefully. The tree behind him seemed perfectly placed, and the sunshine dappled leafy shadows against the thick trunk. Behind him, through the grove of trees, was the steeple of St. Bridget's. On his right was a dumpy middle-aged woman wearing a dress and a hairdo that had been out of style in the United States for 25 years. On his left was a bold-looking hippie girl in tight denims, and beside her, a young black man in a black sweater. His arms folded across his chest. Next was a young father holding an infant, then a bearded young street sadhu, his long hair parted in the middle, and 2 ordinary short-haired middle-class men and their young female companions. Many in the crowd, although standing close by, became distracted, looking off here and there. Apurva Prema.
Prabhupada explained that there are 3 platforms: sensual, mental, and intellectual, and above them is the spiritual platform. The chanting of Hare Krishna is on the spiritual platform, and it is the best process for reviving our eternal blissful consciousness. He invited everyone to attend the meetings at 26 Second Avenue, and concluded his brief speech by saying, "Thank you very much, please chant with us." Then he sat down, took the drum, and began the kirtana again. If it were risky for a 71-year-old man to thump a drum and shout so loud, then he would take that risk for Krishna. It was too good to stop. He had come far from Vrindavan, survived the non-Krishna Yoga Society, waited all winter in obscurity. America had waited hundreds of years with no Krishna chanting, no Hare Krishna, had come from Thoreau's or Emerson's appreciations, though they had pored over English translations of the Gita and Puranas. And no Kirtana had come from Vivekananda's famous speech on behalf of Hinduism at the World Parliament of Religions in Chicago in 1893. So now that he finally had Krishna Bhakti going, flowing like the Ganges to the sea, it could not stop. In his heart, he felt the infinite will of Lord Chaitanya to deliver the fallen souls. He knew this was the desire of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his own spiritual master, even though caste-conscious Brahmanas in India would disapprove of his associating with such untouchables as these drug-mad American meat-eaters and their girlfriends. But Swamiji explained that he was in full accord with the scriptures. The Bhagavatam had clearly stated that Krishna consciousness should be delivered to all races. Everyone was a spiritual soul, and regardless of birth, they could be brought to the high spiritual platform by chanting the holy name. Never mind what sinful things they were doing. These people were perfect candidates for Krishna consciousness. Tompkins Square Park was Krishna's plan. It was also part of the earth, and these people were members of the human race. And the chanting of Hare Krishna was the dharma of the age.
Walking back home in the early evening, past the shops and crowded tenements, followed by more than a dozen interested new people from the park, the Swami again sustained occasional shouts and taunts. But those who followed him from the park were still feeling the aura of an ecstasy that easily tolerated a few taunts from the street. Prabhupada especially was undisturbed. As he walked with his high head, he not speaking, he was gravely absorbed in his thoughts, and yet his eyes actively noticed people and places and exchanged glances with those whom he passed on his way along 7th Street, past the churches and funeral homes, across First Avenue to the noisy, heavily trafficked 2nd Avenue, then down 2nd past liquor stores, coin laundries, delicatessens, past the Iglesia Alenza Christiana Missionera, the Koh-i-Noor Intercontinental Restaurant Palace, then past the Church of the Nativity, and finally back home to number 26. There was a crowd of people from the park standing on the sidewalk outside the store front. Young people waiting for him to arrive and unlock the door to matchless gifts. They wanted to know more about the dance and the chant and the elderly Swami and his disciples who had created such a beautiful scene in the park. They filled the storefront. Outside on the sidewalk, the timid or uncommitted loitered near the door or window, smoking and waiting or peering in and trying to see the paintings on the wall. Swamiji entered and walked directly to his dais and sat down before the largest gathering that had ever graced his temple. He spoke further of Krishna consciousness, the words coming as naturally as breathing, as he quoted the Sanskrit authority behind what they had all been experiencing in the park. Just as they had all chanted today, he said, so everyone should chant always. A long-haired girl sitting close to Swamiji's dais raised her hand and asked, seemingly entranced, when I am chanting, I feel a great concentration of energy on my forehead, and then a buzzing comes and a reddish light.
Just keep on chanting, Swamiji replied. It will clear up. Well, what does the chanting produce? She seemed to be coming out of her trance now. Chanting produces chanting, he replied. Just as when you're calling the name of your beloved, if there is someone you love very much, then you will want to repeat his name again and again. It is out of love. A man spoke up without raising his hand. But isn't it just a kind of hypnotism on sound? Like if I chanted Coca-Cola over and over, wouldn't it be the same? No, Prabhupada replied. You take any word, repeat it for 10 minutes, and you will feel disgusted. But we chant 24 hours and we don't feel tired. Oh, we feel new energy. The question seemed more relevant today.
The guests had all been chanting in the park, and now they were probing philosophically into what they had experienced. The Swami's followers marked this as a victory, and they felt some responsibility as hosts and guides for the others. Swamiji had asked Kirtanananda to prepare some prasadam for the guest, and soon Kirtanananda appeared with small paper cups of sweet rice for everyone.
The chanting process is just to cleanse the mind, said Prabhupada. We have so many misunderstandings about oneself, about this world, about God, and about the relationships between these things. We have so many misgivings. This chanting will help us cleanse the mind, and then you will understand that chanting is non-different from Krishna. A boy who was accompanying the long-haired girl spoke up incoherently. Yes, no, I. Prabhupada, yes, yes, yes. In the beginning, we have to chant. We may be in whatever position we are. It doesn't matter. If you begin chanting, the first benefit will be Cheto Darpana Marjanam. The mind will be clear of all dirty things. The next stage of will be that sufferings, the miseries of the material world will subside. Boy, well, I don't quite understand what the material world is. Because, Prabhupada, the material world is suffering and miseries. Don't you understand? Are you happy? Boy, sometimes I'm happy, sometimes I'm not.
Thank you, Atharva.
Prabhupada, no, you are not happy. That sometimes is your imagination. Just like a deceased man says, oh yes, I am well. What is that? Well, he's going to die and he is well. I don't claim any ultimate happiness. Prabhupada, no. You do not know what happiness is, boy. What is greater or lesser, Prabhupada? Yes, you do not know what is happiness. An older man, standing with his arms folded near the rear of the temple. Well, of course, that sorrow or that suffering might add the spice to make that suffering that goes in between seem happiness. Prabhupada, no. The thing is that there are different kinds of miseries that we all understand. It is only due to our ignorance that we do not care for it. Just like a man who's suffering for a long time, he's forgotten what is real happiness. Similarly, the sufferings are there already. For example, and he directed himself to the young man with his girlfriend. Take, for example, that you are a young man. Now, would you like to become an old man? Boy, I'll become an old man in the process of, Prabhupada, you'll become means you'll be forced to become an old man. But you don't like to become an old man. Boy, I'm not going to be forced to become an old man. Prabhupada, yes, forced. You'll be forced. Boy, I don't see why. Prabhupada, if you don't want to become an old man, you'll be forced to become an old man. Boy, is one of the conditions of.
Thank you, Vinita.
Prabhupada, yes, that condition is miserable. Boy, I find it not miserable, Prabhupada, because you're a young man, but ask any old man how he is suffering. You see, a diseased man. Do you want to be diseased? Boy, I wouldn't search it out. Prabhupada, Boy, I wouldn't search it out. Prabhupada, no, just answer me. Do you like to be diseased? Oh, sorry. Boy, what is disease? Prabhupada, just answer. Boy, what is disease? Prabhupada, oh, you have never suffered from disease? You have never suffered from disease? Prabhupada looks dramatically incredulous. Boy, I have had the mumps and the measles and the whooping cough, which is what everyone has, and you get over it. Some people in the audience laugh. Prabhupada, everyone may be suffering, but that does not mean that it is not suffering. We have to admit that we are always in suffering. Boy, if I have never known happiness, I feel sure I have never known suffering either. That is due to your ignorance. We are in suffering. We don't want to die, but death is there. We don't want to be diseased, but disease is there. We don't want to become old. Old age is there. We don't want so many things, but they are forced upon us, and any sane man will admit that these are sufferings. But if you are accustomed to taking these sufferings, then you say it is all right. But any sane man won't like to be diseased. He won't like to be old, and he won't like to die. Why do you have this peace movement? Because if there is war, there will be death. So people are afraid. They are making agitation. There should be no war. Do you think death is a very pleasurable thing? Boy, I have never experienced. You have experienced and forgotten. Many times you have died. You have experienced, but you have forgotten. Forgetfulness is no excuse. Suppose a child forgot some suffering. That does not mean he did not suffer. Boy, no, I agree, I agree. Prabhupada, yes. So suffering is there. You have to take direction from realized souls, from authorities. Just like in the Bhagavad Gita, it is said, Dukhalya Mashashvatam. This world is full of miseries. So one has to realize it. Unless we understand that this place is miserable, there is no question of how to get out of it. A person who doesn't develop this understanding is not fully developed. Just like the animals, they do not understand what misery is. They are satisfied. It was late when he finally returned to his apartment. One of the boys brought him a cup of hot milk, and someone remarked they should do the chanting in the park every week. Every day, he replied. Even while half a dozen people were present, he lay down on his thin mat. He continued to speak for some minutes, and then his voice trailed off, preaching in fragmented words. He appeared to doze. It was 10 o'clock. They tiptoed out, softly shutting the door.
Thank you so much, everyone, for reading along with us today. How many of you have been to New York and seen Tompkins Square Park or 26 Second Avenue? Tarani? Anyone else? No. It's really nice, actually. They renovated 26 Second Avenue quite recently, actually. So, they put up a lot of the original paintings, like remade versions of them, but they put up the original paintings and kind of replicated what it used to look like back when this story was. It was so magical being there. And I was there for I was there in New York for a few weeks last summer. Um, and we went to Tompkins Square Park for Harinam a few times, and we got to see like the tree that was being described in this passage that Prabhupada would sit under. And they actually have a plaque there underneath the tree, referencing Prabhupada in the park, which is so astonishing to me because, like, sure, I don't know, the park put up a plaque for him, which is quite amazing. Does anyone have any reflections from this passage? Darnie, go ahead.
So like kind of same for me. I remember I think it was called the Hare Krishna tree, right? That in
Yes, yes,
Tompkins
yes,
Square Park.
exactly.
Yeah, I visited it many years ago. And like reading this, I was like kind of thinking about I was like, wow, I've visited the place where I'm reading about right now. Like that's so cool. And I'm also just really grateful to Prabhupada for um, doing all this and grateful to his disciples for being brave enough to go out in public because surely they weren't used to something like this. So, like, going out in public and just doing kirtan and all of that, it's just like a really big deal for them. And it would be a big deal for me too. And so I'm just like kind of in awe and reverence.
Wow. So well put, so well put. See ya.
Hi Krishna. I feel like reading Prabhupada Lamrit today and like I mean, in every chapter you really do see Prabhupada's mercy, but with the previous readings that we did, it all really connects together, like seeing Krishna's hand and everything, and seeing how Krishna is so merciful and sending us such, like, Prabhupada to save us and to establish so many temples. And to see Prabhupada's mercy in that he's so determined to chant like every single day for Harinam, and he's willing to debate with people and like some I know like some people like they feel like debating with such people who like don't really understand it's like a waste of their time, And so to see Prabhupada just trying to, he's so humble, he's trying to make everyone understand, no matter like how like against they may be. So I feel like that was really merciful.
Thank you. Anya?
I found it pretty amazing how they were talking about how persistent Prabhupada was. Like even if like half a dozen people came, he'd still keep on going. And like I found that really like amazing because it shows how much he cares, like how Sia said, and how much he cares that people like no matter how many people are there that he preaches every day and tries to make people understand.
Yeah. One thing I noticed towards the end, it was written that even though there would be about six people left, he would be laying down on his mat talking to them, and he would just like slowly fall asleep because of how insane his like schedule was. He would wake up so early morning and he would write, and then he would be up the entire day preaching and serve like giving service to his disciples, preaching to his disciples, kirtan. And I know for a fact I could not ever live on that much amount of sleep, but the amount of dedication he had is so incredible. Um, and then there was one more thing that also stuck out to me. Oh yeah, Prabhupada's um, when he mentioned that because the boy said like, "Oh, I've had the measles, I've had the mumps, but everyone's had that." But Prabhupada's response was like very, very factual and also commonsensical. That just because everyone's had it, that doesn't mean it's not suffering. And I notice I can't think of a good example right now. I was trying to think of one, but there's so many things in life that truly is suffering, but we just take it for granted because apparently that is life. But that's not that is suffering because that's not life in the spiritual world, and inherently life here is suffering. And without looking at everything at like face value, we can start to see that this material world isn't as beautiful as people make it up to be. Anyone else have any reflections from the reading, any of the readings today, or anything that happened in their week that they wanted to share? Anyone have any fun life updates? Sia, go ahead.
Fun life update is that me and my friends we started Bhagavatam reading every morning, and although it's first canto and we still have a while to go before all the stories come, it's really nice because when I was trying to read Bhagavatam by myself, I feel like especially with like the first two cantos, I would like just like read them, but a lot of it would just fly over my head. So to like sit down with people and then like highlight the lines that you like and then like have a short discussion afterwards, it's so much more like I'm like able to like remember points throughout the day and like reflect on those points throughout the day. So I'm really happy that like I'm able to start this sadhana.
That's amazing. Yeah, I've always felt that reading in a group is so much more beneficial for me, especially because you're right, so much flies over my head, but there's like these realized souls out there that understand it and they share their point of view, and it's a lot easier to understand it from a peer sometimes than it is from the text. So that's amazing. I'm really happy for you. Tarini, go ahead.
I don't have any updates, but I thought of an example. You said for things that we like to say is part of life, even though it's technically suffering. One major example I think is very applicable to today, especially in like Kali Yuga, is social injustice and like political injustices. For example, like I don't know, someone being what's the word? Like someone being uh if someone was a victim of a certain crime and then the person who attacked them or whatever it was, they just like getting either little to no sentence in jail or like no punishment, or like extremely delayed punishment, all those type of things. And that's like a major issue in today's Kali governments across the world.
Yeah, yeah. So many like you just opened my mind to so many different like social issues that we have, and it's genuinely never ending. And
Yeah.
eventually you just start to accept that it's how the world works and we have to get over it. But in essence, it is suffering because none of that exists in the spiritual world. Everyone is just coexisting, happy, and all serving Krishna. All right. I want to thank all of you for having such a wonderful discussion, joining Youth Jam today. It was such a nice discussion we had today. So thank you so much, and I think we'll end it here unless anyone has some closing points. All right. Thank you so much for joining. Hare Krishna.